I'm very, very pleased to be talking today to Akeem Balogun. And I know Akeem well. He has had a wonderful journey with Off the Shelf. He was a volunteer for 10 years with Off the Shelf, and then he's made that journey to being a guest author during lockdown with his book The Storm. And now, this year, we're so excited because he's going to be a guest curator, and he's actually doing a whole event. I'm going to get him to talk about that. So lovely to see you, Akeem. And tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Off the Shelf initially.
Okay, Off the Shelf, I have to think back, I think...
It was a while ago?
It was a while, because I started writing in 2011. Just before I left Sheffield to go to university, and I remember going to the library and just asking about what things can I do around writing in the city, and then I spoke to someone and they mentioned Off the Shelf Festival. Yeah, but it wasn't until the following year, after I finished my first year at university, when I came back to Sheffield and I sort of inquired about it, and then realised I could be a volunteer, and I thought that's a really easy way to meet several authors and just get a good look at
and
literature.
here's some great events, and we still need volunteers, and we couldn't do the festival without our volunteers, so we're very grateful for them. And I have to say that, Akeem, you were one of our #1 volunteers, our go-to volunteer. If anybody dropped out, I would always be phoning Akeem saying, please, can you come and help us out? And he would always be there. So it's wonderful, since you got involved in Off the Shelf, as you said, all that time ago, that you've now actually a published writer, and you're going to be curating this event for us this year. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the curated event, which is going to be in this very space that we're speaking in.
It's going to be right here, called Event Central.
Event Central.
Yes, so connected to Access Space. And the event it's an accumulation of things, I think, because I've been volunteering with the fest since 2012, and now it's 2022. And over that period, you come across a lot of writers and authors, and I wanted this event to sort of be groups of authors coming together, artists within the city as well, and just using it as an opportunity to put people within the story, because most events around literature is just, you might have someone speaking about their book, reading from some work, or performing some work. So I thought it'd be good to put the words at the forefront, but at the same time add a sort of extra dimension to it.
So it's immersive, isn't it?
Yes, that's the word for it, yeah.
Event.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be projected words.
Precisely, yeah.
And music, so when you walk into the space, it will be all around you. It won't be just sort of sitting, listening to somebody on a stage. It will be, you'll be surrounded by the words.
Yeah, exactly, because often when you write stories and people are reading them, they sort of tell you, oh, this would be great as an audio drama or a film or a play, which is good to hear. But I think just the book itself is almost like the highest sort of pinnacle of the actual art form if it starts off as a story. So I thought it'd be excellent for people to walk into this room here, and rather than it be a sort of performance or a film, you're actually in the middle of the story, because you've got the words sort of spinning around you, but then you've got the sort of sound effects from the audio that the musicians make behind the actual narrated text. So there's this sort of 3 layers. You've got the sort of ambient sort of sound / music, and then you've got the actual text sort of circulating around you, and then you have the actual narration as well. So it's just putting people in the middle of the story.
And how many people involved in the curation?
Okay, so we've got Selma DeBar, she's a writer from London. We've got Laura Bowie, who is a writer from Manchester. We've got James Giddens, who's a writer from Sheffield. And then we've got Komodo, who's a musician from Sheffield, who's going to add, some sound. Then we've got Utah, another musician from Sheffield. And then we've got DSL, who's another musician from Sheffield. And then we've got Zarin, the projectionist. And then we've got Ryder Shafiq, who does some of the narrating. And then there's actually another narrator who's sort of being plucked in now, who I can't name, who will narrate one of the stories as well. And then there's myself, and I think that's everyone. So it must be 8 or 9 people. So it's a few.
That's a lot of things to organise. And I should say that a few years ago, and Akeem has been coming to events off the shelf for years, but he did say, looking at this year, I'm not sure there's that much that I would want to go to, or that there's some things that interest me, but not as many as I'd hoped for. And so we did rise to that challenge and say, okay, what would you like to see? What would you do if you were in our place? So we're kind of handing that over, and it's wonderful because it's new ideas. I don't think we would have thought about doing an immersive thing particularly, and all those contacts you've got, all those other writers from all over the place. So it'd be really exciting, be fantastic to get a chance to come and see that on the 22nd of October. And I think you're doing it twice?
Yeah, twice on a Saturday, once at 4 p.m. and then a sort of second showing at 6 p.m. on the same day.
Yeah. So the off-the-shelf brochure is hot off the press. And actually another thing that Akeem has been involved in is the absolutely fantastic artwork, which is by a Sheffield artist, Thomas Fowler. I think he's now based in Thailand, in Bangkok.
Yeah, at the moment, at the
moment. It was Akeem's curation. He introduced us to Thomas to do the cover. So you might not believe, but this is actually a painting. It isn't a photograph, it's a painting. We're thrilled with it. It's absolutely beautiful. So we think these are going to be flying out of everywhere we put them down, because people are going to think, look at that. It is absolutely beautiful. So thanks for that this year, Akeem. But inside as well, I hope that this year there are a few things, as well as your own curation, that you will be interested in coming to. Are there any things in particular you're looking forward to?
Well, there's one you mentioned actually that I missed, an emotional dictionary by Souza then. That one, that sounds interesting.
She was on Countdown, she was on Dictionary Corner for years, Susie, but she's so clever and so funny, and it's all about words. I think that'll be a really good event.
So that's definitely one. And then I've got also Phenotypes, which is And Other Stories, the publisher based in Sheffield, by Paulo Scott. So
and he's Brazilian, because we do try and have some international authors. I mean, we like to support local authors. It's kind of local, regional, national and international. So we have got a few authors this year, Finland, America, Brazil, to name some of them. So. And
then there's one more I've seen by Kosi Tuti.
Cozy Fanny Tuti?
Yeah, on Friday the 28th. I think is it Regarding Sisters?
It's called Re-Sisters.
Re-Sisters, right.
But she was a real, she's a real trailblazer, is Cozy, and this book is about pioneering women in music. So I'm looking forward to that. And we've got another good music one actually for music fans, which is Martin Ware from Heaven 17. So he's got the first bit of his memoir out about being in the Human League first and then Heaven 17. And of course, Sheffield is known as the home of electronic music. So anybody who's interested in music will be interested in that, I'm sure. But I think that's one of the things that I do as a programmer for Off the Shelf, I do love, because it is such an eclectic mix of things at Off the Shelf. So we've got the fiction and history, local history, poetry, there's open mics, there's family events. And I think words in translation, it's that real mix of things. I always say, people say to me, I don't read much. But I'll say, well, you do. Do you read comics? Do you read recipes? Do you read
articles,
magazines? You know, it's not all just about the book. It's about words. And everybody does read, whether it's lyrics, you know. So there will be something for you there, I hope, in our 31st edition.
100%.
You're a writer as well, and you had your book, The Storm, which we had in 2020 when it was COVID. So that was when most of our events were online, but you did talk about that book then. What advice would you give to any other aspiring young writers out there?
That's a big question, that, isn't it?
What's your advice for anybody coming to Off the Shelf for the first time, but who's got a story to tell, who wants to get into writing? What would your advice be?
I think the first thing I'd say is, well, not to force it. That's what I'd say. Try and, because I think with writing, there's often people talk about it as a very sort of painful exercise that you have to wake up every morning and do, and I think that can make people fall out of love with it.
Right.
And I think you should write in a manner that you actually enjoy if you want, or that you sort of wake up and want to do. So that would be the first thing. And secondly, I mean, I could go on, you know, honestly, but I think don't put too much pressure on yourself. That's a big thing. And just try and write uninhibited. You know, don't try and write like anyone else. I think if you, and also you're going to tend to write the stuff you've read, and like, don't be embarrassed about that. Just you know, write what you want. That makes your voice feel authentic, even before you might have the craft and all this stuff down.
Yeah.
If there's an authentic voice, and then I think people will connect with that more than anything. And then you can just learn the sort of run-of-the-mill stuff and the exercises and learn how to frame it right. But I'd say the first two things is to don't put too much pressure on yourself. You know, try to enjoy it and just, you know,
See what comes.
Yeah. And that, I mean, but there's clearly a lot more to add. But I'd say that's the beginning.
And we have got some writing workshops.
Yes, yeah.
So we always have some writing workshops, because obviously we are here for readers and writers. I think there's quite a few.
There is. You've got one by David Anand, haven't you? He wrote and Peter Dan, and I've met him a couple of times.
And that's
great.
all about architecture and using buildings as your inspiration for writing, which I think that'll be really interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for chatting today. I can't wait for the actual curated, the day of the curation, and when all will be revealed. Be very exciting, and it is wonderful to be able to have you as a curator this year, after 10 years good service as a volunteer for Off the Shelf. So thank you so much, Akeem.
Thank you very much.